My name is Kareem, and I am a co-founder of the PeaceTalks Club at the International School of Geneva. The PeaceTalks Club aims to create an inclusive space for dialogue within our school community, where interests of our members can be promoted and explored. Because of this, we don't have a prescribed curriculum, but rather cater to the needs of our members. So this might mean that one week may consist of a debate, whilst another can be a reaction to another peace talk we've watched, or discussing local, national, or international news headlines. I'm Egyptian and Australian, so when I'm asked, where are you from, I offer a somewhat instinctive answer of, I'm Egyptian and Australian. This answer is easy, and it's honest, if one is to take being from somewhere as a matter of fact. But the fact is that in international hubs, and especially in communities like the International School of Geneva, the lines of nationality are blurred. Many people, including me, can't identify with one country, two, or maybe even three. In many circles, you'll find more global citizens than citizens, and whilst the connection to the PeaceTalks Club may not be entirely clear, let me elaborate. I find that the mutual understanding and respect that comes with global citizenship is the necessary prerequisite to the kind of dialogue that will allow us to rebuild from COVID for a better world. It allows us to reconcile our differences and to begin to understand the vastly diverse influences that shape each and every one of our identities. And quite frankly, without this understanding and without this respect, I don't know how far we can get in terms of solving the big issues of our day. Perhaps the biggest, and one which has been discussed quite extensively in PeaceTalks Club, has been global warming and the climate crisis. And an interesting topic that's come out of it has been the blame of global warming. And whilst it would be great to acknowledge the futility of pointing fingers and to move forward in implementing real solutions, we have to understand why real solutions aren't really being implemented to the extent that they should be. So to illustrate this, and perhaps to give you a glimpse into some of our conversations, I've brought two little anecdotes. Firstly, a statistic. The 20 largest companies in the world emit 35% of global carbon emissions. Secondly, an article headline from the Duke Global Health Institute, which claimed that replacing traditional wood-burning stoves in sub-Saharan Africa alone would be enough to offset the carbon emissions of Belgium or Florida. Now, whilst this headline might not need to be taken literally, I think it offers us a really interesting insight into some of the assumptions we hold around this topic. Because our conversations surrounding the big issues of our day are plagued by consumerist and industrialist and eco-orientalist assumptions. These assumptions actively block us from getting to our end goal, peace, which I find not to be, as other speakers have said, the absence of conflict, but a mutual respect for each other's dignity and all the benefits that come from that. This is where spaces for conversation are required. Enter Peace Talks. Community organization will allow us to rewrite the narrative of change and reconstruct the language of change, which is imbued with the same interests as the conversations we're having. It will allow us to deconstruct these harmful preconceived ideas and will allow us a space for conversation that tries its best to remain productive and impartial. When it's isolated, this community organization is helpful, but for it to really have an effect on the large issues facing us today, it has to take place on all levels: schools, offices, cantons, communes, national and international. That international dialogue is happening in this room before your eyes. But how are we, the youth, supposed to take part in this international dialogue if we don't start at what some may call the lowest level? And while some call it the lowest level, I would perhaps call it the most intimate and the most personal, and the level that has the largest capacity to affect how an individual thinks, and more importantly, how an individual approaches problems. Finally, this organization has allowed 3 high schoolers to approach an issue so large that it seemed like no 17-year-old could ever address it. But here we are, addressing it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ksenia Vlasova-Kuznetsova, and as you may have guessed from my name, I am Russian. To be entirely truthful, I'm a second-generation immigrant, and though this can, in some instances, be seen as a weakness or make me less Russian, it has allowed me to reflect upon my country's socioeconomic development from a second perspective. I am referring here to the depletion and ransacking of the Russian economy after the fall of the Soviet Union. And the many consequences that this has had on modern-day Russia. One problem in particular has risen from this epoch, and coincidentally, it is one that I would like to speak to you all about today: economic disparity. By living in Geneva and by attending the International School of Geneva, I am aware that I am in an incredibly privileged position, one that contrasts starkly with that of our family friends living on the outskirts of Moscow. They are a family of 10 with one of the 8 children suffering from Down syndrome and live on the 5th floor of an apartment block that does not have an elevator. All the children sleep in bunk beds as the apartment only has 3 rooms, and up until 2012, they did not have a fridge. I am using this personal story to showcase the living situation of many families in Russia, which brings me to the first horrifying statistic that I have found. A report done by Credit Suisse in 2017 found that the richest 10% of Russians own 87% of the country's wealth, compared to 76% in the US and 66% in China. Oh my God, I'm really sorry. Economic disparity is driven by inequalities within a country as well as inequalities between countries. Today, the world's richest 1% has almost as much wealth as 60% of the Earth's population. These statistics are very grim, and this brings the question: how does our PeaceTalks Club come into play? During our club meetings, conversations revolve around institutionalized capitalism and what we, as the younger generation, can aim to do to fix economic disparity. A group of high schoolers meeting at lunch does not resolve such an issue, yet it allows for a conversation to take place, a back and forth that provides space for reflections about how we can make our world more equitable and sustainable. Some reflections seem more indisputable than others or undeniable. To make room for change, recovery in the context of economic disparity is needed. Similarly, an understanding of different positions on the topic, as well as of the notions of what is equitable and fair, are a must when discussing this issue. This is where PeaceTalks comes in, providing a space where we can all learn, debate, and most importantly, discuss troubling issues in society, which allows for true innovation and progress to take place. These latter notions can only be achieved when communities come together, whether it is on a regional or international level. And it is why PeaceTalks is so important to us. To me, peace is a lack of wealth inequality, and when we can all live sustainably and account for everyone's well-being. In the face of this ever-changing society, this unstable global economy, and even this pandemic that we are all living through, it becomes evident that it is our responsibility to look for peace in this world and aim to implement it. As without these discussions and this collaboration, it is unclear what we will be faced with next. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Héloïse Hughes, and I'm a 17-year-old from Cameroon and South Africa. When I was younger, I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. My mom is black, and my dad is white. Because I go to school in Switzerland, at school, I am black, but in Cameroon, on the other hand, I'm white, l'enfant blanc, as they call me. This had led to confusion and identity crises, but more importantly, it has given me a better understanding, a clearer understanding of racism. I quickly saw that there was a drastic difference between how I was treated at school and how I was treated in my home country. At school, I remember being excluded from friend groups. I was not allowed to play with some of them. From the ages of 7 to 8, I was constantly reminded that my skin was the color of poo, some children going as far as refusing to touch me because of it. As I grew older and started caring about social justice, I was labeled an angry black girl, and I grew used to people telling me that I was reading into situations or looking for issues in an environment where there weren't any. It was and still is strange for me to be called white in Cameroon. My experiences and the stark difference in appearance between me and most of my peers means that I am comfortable being seen and called black. So when I transitioned from an environment where I was seen as black to one where I am seen as white, I did feel rejected from a community with which I identified myself. But I also saw that there was a difference between how I was treated. In Cameroon, I received compliments almost every single day. The compliments from strangers were almost always about my lighter skin complexion or my looser curl. People went out of their way to do me favors every day. The colorism in my country gave me comfort. It is something that if I hadn't experienced both sides of, I may not even want to address. But as I grew older and I saw that there was a difference in how I was treated depending on how I was perceived, I decided that I had to do something about it. And that something begins with me as a student. Do you know that according to a report written by the Swiss Confederation in 2018, 75% of foreigners in Switzerland have been victims of racism. 52% of these cases come from schools, and this statistic does not even include primary students, which is when I personally felt the most marginalized. Switzerland is a very inclusive country, and for the most part, people really embrace the internationalism. But these cases begin because people are scared to teach young students about racism. They are scared to teach children that hatred exists. So instead, these children learn hatred elsewhere, and their minds are quickly corrupted. I believe that to solve this issue, all that is needed is conversation. And that is where PeaceTalks come in. This is why I have decided to lead the PeaceTalks project, the PeaceTalks Club. I wanted to create an environment where students could talk to each other about anything and learn from each other. And that is what this club has been. I've learned 3 things from the club this year. Meaningful conversations about important topics clarifies our vision of the world. Our vision of peace is influenced by our experiences. And new perspectives on peace create new opportunities for togetherness. Peace, to me, is inclusivity. Thank you.